as well as being a business advisory partner here at HLB Manager, I'm also quite passionate about being the HR partner. So Kim introduced Leanne Bloomfield before. I've worked with Leanne now for quite a few years, so I'm quite passionate about this whole idea about people and the value that they bring to an organisation. And it was really interesting to hear from Andrew about what is going on in your sector in relation to salary and other engagement activities, because I do think I support his view that often engaging people is less about the money and more about all the other things that you do. And in our work, particularly with our small business and NFP clients, we're doing a lot of work now about how do we bring team together. And so my spot today will really be about following on from Andrew about now that you have your people, what are you going to do as an organisation to maximise the investment that you're making? Because obviously people is a massive part of most businesses and particularly service-orientated organisations. So just some of the themes from the Pro Bono survey, I'll pick up on those. Once you have your people, what next? And I've noticed now there's a lot of education, there's a lot of investment in trying to understand how do you measure outcomes. And I think investing in people and the relationship to outcomes is a very important part of this sector. And then also, I think what's more important though is then creating systems within organisations to actually support that. So once you have the right people doing the right things, how do you make sure that that happens on a recurring basis to really maximise that investment? So some of the themes that I heard from Andrew, I mean, I thought fair pay being important, it coordinates or aligns with my view and what I've experienced both in the for-profit and not-for-profit sectors. There is a point where you can cut it off and it doesn't do any more. And I think on the other way, I think if you don't do enough of the other things, then it has an impact. So I concur with that. I really do think, though, that one of the key statistics is that, and I sort of put it up there in advance because I spoke to Andrew just before the presentation. I didn't get a chance to change my slides, so I had a bit of vision. Funding may or may not keep pace with the need for salary increase. So the fact that 12% of the organisations surveyed don't foresee that there's going to be any pay review is an important attribute. And then it's going to be about, do you do more with less people or are you able to engage those people that are left behind in a sufficient way that they'll accept less pay? So have the people, so what's next? For me, we tend to base our recruitment strategy on job descriptions and what we know. But we have an amount of money to invest, we have some energy to invest, and we have an understanding of what it is we're looking for when we invest our money into future people. Once we have them, I think one of the things I find that people onboard people quickly. Andrew referred to the costs of onboarding. I think a big part of onboarding is you have a person who knows what they're doing, but they've always just done it. And nobody's really sure, and this comes out over and over and over again. I think it would even exist in my organisation. We get very comfortable that people have been around for a while. Do we know what they're actually doing? And so when we come to replace them, we actually go and get a person whose sort of CV matches off with the job description, but then we don't actually know, once they're on board, what it is they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. We could probably broadly describe their job and their job description and what we think we want them to do, but are we sure that they're doing the right things and right activities that are going to hit the organisation's goals? And ultimately, as I agree with Yvette, it's the biggest expense, or as I prefer it, the biggest investment most organisations make. If most P&Ls, particularly in this sector and a lot of service industries, it's their people cost or their people investment. And it's not just the salary, it's all the training related costs. It's the way things feel, it's the HR, it's our H&S programs. So it's a very, very big investment that your organisations make. And so we're going to make sure that we're getting most from it. And so why is it important? So again, bringing lots of things together, when what we're seeing is I've met a lot of good people in this sector. And mostly good. In fact, many other sectors are full of nasty people who are only there for a certain... They probably would be motivated by the money and they'd probably punch you in the face. You gave them 2 movie tickets and not the $5,000 that you heard that was on offer to somebody else. So the point is there are a lot of good people in this sector. But the point of it is are they getting driven in the right way? Are they getting motivated in the right way? What's it all about? And now this concept around impact and outcome is really important, I think, and how the next phase of the sector, and I think over the next 3 or 5 years, we're going to see a lot of fallout as those organisations can do it well and those that can't. So it's important to me is the relationship between your people and the outcomes that you wish to achieve. And again, this is Les Hems, I think most of you or some of you would know from EY, has done a lot of work around measuring impact or measuring outcomes. And nobody's really sure how to do it yet, but there's some organisations that are doing better than others. But let's forget how we measure it first. We just know that we want it to happen. The people element is going to be the first stage. So bringing them on board is really only the first step. But then, for me, activities undertaken lead to outputs. And that's the stuff that's clearly measurable. A lot of this is driven by government funding, and I've read some of it, and frankly, I get a little confused at times about government will give money to organisations and they say what they want, but what they really want and what they ask you to give them information upon, I struggle. I'm a simple guy, shop steward, son of a shop steward, son of a plumber. We might not be the smartest blokes in the room. However, I cut things down pretty simple sometimes. I say, well, if you want a certain outcome, you've got to do certain things. And measuring the outputs that are being asked to be measured at the moment in the sector aren't always the right things that are going to lead to the right behaviour that leads to the right outcome for what the money is to be invested for. Over time, getting the right people, making sure they're doing the right things to produce the right outputs that lead to the right outcomes is going to be what it's going to be all about. The organisations that can do this the best, I think, will be the ones that have the greatest impact on society and in the areas and the sectors that they wish to impact. So your people. So the dollar cost, the stuff that Andrew was talking about, really comes down to stuff. It comes down to the attributes, the skills, the talents, the underlying makeup, the people that you employ. The salary and all those other costs, it really just represents an investment in those skills. I actually also find that I don't know that we're always as clear around all our skills. We actually go and ask people in an interview or over a series of interviews and over time about what we think they know. So they'll put on their CV. I always put on my CV. I've been at HLB Manjard for 25 years, so it's been probably, I need to dust it off probably. It's probably updated for electronic means. But people will put in their CV, in my experience, all those things they think you want to hear. They don't actually put in all the stuff that might really make an impact. So I think in understanding the first piece really of your people is, and you guys probably would be better at it, because I do believe that there's a more caring element broadly in the sector, and so people do take that time to get to know you. I've had more conversations, genuine conversations about what goes on in my life when I talk to people than I have with a lot of other clients that I deal with. So I think that there's probably a relevance here in the sector that this is important, but also probably more known. But is it broadly, and I think I come from the angle when I think about people and is how does the organisation capture it as a system and as a process so it's repeatable and improvable. So I really think it's, are you really clear on what makes up your talent pool? Energy, gone one too far, sorry, Energy versus time. I think this is one of the big things, and Kate and I have been doing a lot of work on this lately, is that as budgets get stretched, as people's time gets stretched, we realise that if we can motivate, and Andrew alluded to it, if you can get people really energetic about your cause, we tend to find, and I don't know how you find, so I tend to find that if you have a really engaged person, they have got boundless energy. My best employees, my best team members will shoot me stuff through in the middle of the night, early in the morning or on their weekend. And when I say, look, I'd really prefer you didn't work on your weekend or weekend, no, I love it. I love what I'm doing. And it's that kind of energy that you want to tap into. So I do think that getting the right people is the first piece. But if you can get people who are really engaged, for all the reasons that Andrew said, I think we're actually going to find that we're going to get better outcomes. And are they clear? And I think this is a big piece. How we communicate what we're trying to achieve as an organisation is really, I think, challenging. And I could draw a straight line right through, and probably the smaller end of the sectors, not just the not-for-profit space, but also in the for-profit space. People just assume because we're smaller or because we're not as big as some of the big ones, and I would probably even argue in bigger organisations they might think they know what they're on about, but they don't. But people just assume a whole lot of things, and so they just assume what's expected of them. They just assume what their role is. They assume what they're, Monday to Friday, what am I meant to achieve? A lot of the, and I come to more of this when we talk about outputs, because I actually think we measure time as an output, whereas actually I see time as an input. And I think the amount of understanding there is about what your organisation's trying to achieve is really going to maximise So when you're onboarding, people say, do you know what we do? And then they tell you what they do because they've read your website, then actually crack that down and say, well, actually, no, what we really do is, and break it down into something that really makes sense. And then they can go and apply it in everything they do. But I don't think that this is something that we do strongly enough. And again, and I'm pointing the finger at anybody because I probably could even look at my own organisation. As we grow, we probably start to find that we get a little bit grey. If I went down and asked some of my team members, some of them might give a different answer. And I think the more we can get them to say the same thing, the more we're going to have that alignment. So activities. So activities is those things when you turn up every day. Do we know? I think managers, everybody's getting busier. I use the expression that when I go to dinner parties now, I catch up with my mates. I haven't seen them for 3 or 4 or 5 months. I already know they're going to tell me that they're really busy, and I'm sorry I haven't seen you for 4 or 5 months because I'm really busy. And I think Sydney, Australia, the world's got a busy crisis. And we're also busy being busy. We forget to check in regularly with, are we doing the right things? And so I just think when managers are managing people or in a chain or line of command, do you know what they're doing? And are they actually doing the right things? Because undertaking the wrong activities with the right people, I believe, is going to get the wrong output and the wrong outcome. So it really is this conversation about, are we challenging what people are doing every week, every month, every year, when we set ourselves around setting up strategic plans and budgets? And I think we'd be coming into that sector now. It's, April. So we're going to start setting up our budgets if we haven't done so already. We're going to start thinking about what's our budget for this, what's our budget for that. And that'll be a numbers exercise, a dollars exercise, but do we put anything really sharp around what I want you to do Monday next week, Tuesday next week, around an actual production of something, some outcome. We run into this term of productive procrastination. That's where I'm so busy doing stuff that's not important that I just can't get to that stuff that I really know I should do, but I'm struggling a little bit to get it done, or I'm not clear, or somebody's not available, and so I don't get it done. We talk a lot of KPIs. The whole world knows what a KPI is. Everybody's got one, and it's usually a percentage of revenue or a percentage of your salary, which is your bonus, or it's a number of stuff. We talk about key performance drivers, and I know we're probably not the only people who do that, but we like to talk about it a lot, around going, okay, what a KPI is the outcome you get when you've done something. And if you measure it, that's great. It's going to give you some result. But if you don't know what your driver of outperformance is, so what it is you want to deliver, and again, I come back to vision or mission or purpose or whatever you want to call it in your organisation, what are the things, the activities you're going to do that are going to drive that behaviour that's going to lead to the best outcomes? So getting down and really understanding what your key performance drivers are is the first step, and then it's KPIs. And I think, and I do believe that, I guess, and again, this is an observation rather than perhaps a fact, opinion rather than a fact. I see that the government seems to ask a lot when they're asking for reporting in acquittals and other kinds of things. They ask for information, which I don't know that is completely relevant around what the drivers of great performance are. So it's all really about eliminating waste, because you get the key drivers, then you focus on those, and then everybody knows what they should be doing. So outputs, are you getting the right outputs? Everybody always scratches their head. Geez, we know we've spent all the money, but we don't have what we thought we'd get, and we don't know. But everybody's hitting their KPIs because revenue's growing. And I know that revenue, I still talk to a lot of not-for-profits who talk about the board. I said, so what's the board's strategy? I had a strategy planning day the other week. Went out, I said, what did the board tell you? They want to double in size. What's that mean? Oh, we want to double our revenue. Why would that matter? And again, when we only go at top line, that's not going to necessarily lead to the best outcomes. Because again, the government, what I read, and I read the paper a bit old school like, they read the paper on Saturday morning, but the government's talking about having less money. Joe Hockey's only telling us last week how the iron ore royalties are down. Geez, wonder what that's going to mean. GST's going to go up, now they're going to want to tax super, all these other things are happening. That means government spending's under pressure. So if you're relying on government funding, I don't think there's going to be more revenue if you want to double your revenue. So it might actually be more of a conversation with the board, and I'm happy to have a conversation with them if you'd like me to break it down for them, is to say, well, what are you going to do with less revenue? What's the right KPI measure? And it might not be increased revenue, because in a not-for-profit sector, that doesn't really make much sense to me. And that's only one. But it's really topical, I think, around this whole conversation that's going on, and I know there have been a few seminars the last month or so around measuring impact, and people want to understand, stakeholders, the government, your donors, the boards, the actual recipients of your services are going to actually want to understand, if I invest my money with you via a donation or a grant of some kind, what am I going to get for it? So the whole output conversation to me is the intervening phase between activities and outcomes. So if you're going to start to say, what are the outputs that actually lead to the outcomes? So this is when people start to acknowledge that you're actually doing the things that you say on your websites and in your vision statements. We will do, and if you come to us and you're struggling in community, we will help you have a better life experience. That's the outcome. So how we get there, I really think is quite straightforward. I mean, it's getting the right people. Andrew's helped us a little bit with that, and the pro bono survey, I'll be quite honest, I said to Kim when she said, and I admitted to Andrew, she said, oh, Matt, you can go through the highlights of the pro bono salary survey. I said, oh, Kimmy, it's only 2 times I ever look at a salary survey. One, when I want a pay rise, and that hasn't been for a while. Or 2, when I'm trying to pay somebody less. No, I'm joking. When I look for making sure that my team are paid well. So I just really think that that's the first phase, right? So Andrew's told you what's got to be done, and even do you notice how he brushed away? He did the survey, and he even said, look, let's just put that aside, and he started talking about all the good stuff. So getting the right people is one part, taking the right actions, getting the right results is how you get the great outcomes. So really, if I think about it, we spend all this time and energy, and I know we do in our organisation, and I know Leanne and her team in our organisation spend way much time on getting that part right, getting the right people. But to me, are they doing the right things when they get here? So do we have the right job descriptions in place for a start? If we haven't reviewed our job descriptions for the last 10 years, are they still relevant? If they're not doing the right activities every week, are we going to get the right output to get the right outcomes? How do we know? Genuinely know. And if some of you are managers of people there, and I know occasionally I feel a little guilty. I think, hang on, I haven't checked in with my team for a while. How do I really know that they're doing the things, the right activities that are going to lead to what we want to achieve as an organisation? And I just think there's an opportunity too, as a bit of a segue here with outcome, is all those people that you want to engage with and do the right activities may not actually all be inside your own organisation now or in the future. There may be alignment with other organisations, there may be mergers, there might be joint ventures. So this whole conversation about right people, right activities leading to the right outputs, giving you the right outcomes, might be a broader conversation than what you think it might be today. So it gets a long way away, I think, from that whole conversation around salary survey and engaging of individuals, because it becomes, for me, I think Andrew was talking very much about individuals and how you motivate individuals. I'd like to take that up a level and say, as an organisation, how we create structure and process around that. So how do you create a system to maximise impact? So we talk about 2 types of time. We call them different things, but let's, for the sake of the argument, there's controllable time, there's uncontrollable time. The controllable time we'll talk about later, because that's the bit that everybody goes, oh, in those conversations about being busy, that's a great dinner party conversation. How you been? I've been really busy. What have you been doing? All this stuff that got put on my plate that nobody ever told me about. So when I think about, you think about how much we start a conversation with any person where we start this process, how much of your time of your day is actually out of your control? So I think about things like emails and telephones, the meetings, the unexpected stuff that comes up that jumps into your diary that you never saw it coming. Because I know there's a room of very, very important people here, and we do know that there's a correlation between lack of control time and hierarchy. So the more important I am, the busier I can be, and the less I can get done. Seems to be accepted logic around the world today. Because particularly if you've got an iPhone, an iPad, and a laptop all going at once, then you're a really effective person. And we all know that's not the truth. When we started working on this piece with people, and I challenge you to do it, is you don't really know. The first part when we start down a track like this is we ask individuals in a team, do you know what you do every day? Do you know how much? And they don't. And because as a rule, we'll all have calendars, Outlook gives us a calendar. We have diaries. We have people to tell us where to be. You know we get put in place. But it's only when we create focus that we really become aware of what it is that we do. And it really is a little frightening to start with. So what we try to do is then, once you've worked out, once you know how much time you actually have, what we then ask is, so you might say, in a standard working day of 7.5 hours, I have 4.5 hours of chaos or uncontrollable time. The 3 hours is what we want to work with. Or it might be 4, or it might be really organised, it's 5 hours. But we find out with whatever it is, because at the end of the day, to make your organisation better, we've made an investment in our people. We want to get those activities to the top of the pile that are most important to us. And I challenge this as individuals, and then we go up to the organisation, or individuals, team, organisation level. So schedule activities that need to be done each weekday or workday. So we have those in our diary. We could have those things that we know have to happen every Monday, reports that have to be read, or meetings that have to be held, phone calls that have to be made. And rather than just saying, look, I think they have to be made on Monday and then being skipped or forgotten, put them in. Know in advance what has to be done. That's I think a big learn for me with this, and I've started to do this, is know in advance what you have to do and be really strong about it. And that might include aspects of work. It also might include aspects of personal time. But if you allocate it in advance, and we do this typically by the week and then by the month, and ultimately for teams, after we've got our teams educated on, we start to talk about it for the quarter or for the 6 months. And you start to get plan, and if you start to see, then you can start to untap the potential within your team. I mean, manufacturing did this a long time ago. People will be aware of lean manufacturing work practices. But if you start doing this with people, you start to find that they start to educate themselves and each other about where the opportunity lies to improve. So as I say, get the whole team to do it. And it's not done as a way of, I challenge that if you were to do this, it's not done as a way of Big Brother watching you. It's actually done as a way of helping people to really unlock themselves, because I think we've become, I actually left my phone downstairs, so you can see I'm sweating. But people tend to use that as their default position. I've got 5 minutes to kill, I'm going to go and look at my phone. Or I'm going to go and find that thing that keeps me active. So I do believe if you get the whole team to it and you explain to them that, guys, I just want us to understand what are we doing as a team and report that back to each other. If you're the manager of that team, then you can start to get a bit of an insight into, you know, you think you may have 37.5 available hours per team member, let's call them. Then you suddenly start to work out what you actually have, what are the things that have to be done, and then what time is left. What of the controlled time is left over once we start to become a bit more efficient, to make sure that we can do the things that the organisation really needs to be done to improve. When people do this, when teams do this, individuals do it. We have had the experience of one lady we're working with. She actually found about a week and a half in her every month, a week and a half, because what she was doing, she was a self-diagnosed work grazer. Put your hand, you know, you're probably all too shy. Work grazers are the people who pick up and put down, pick up and get distracted by that, and then the phone rings, and then they move around and do that. That's what she was doing. And simply by going, hang on, I've noticed nobody cared if she did it all on Thursday or throughout the week. So she decided to put it on Thursday. She was self-diagnosed and she was self-healed, I guess. So the whole thing is you actually create additional time that you didn't know that you had. And again, I drawing it back to Andrew's conversation about, do we have payroll? Do we have the right people doing the right things? And do we have the really great people who could be doing more if we only help them to find the time? So you can actually achieve more with the same team. So with the same spend, you can actually see we see organisations doing great things, getting greater output because they're just doing things in a better way. They're creating greater outcomes. At least, look, and as I said, who knows how to measure outcomes? It hasn't been clearly established in one way or another how to do that. But we know that teams are more happily engaged. They're really firing on. We're seeing some people move on from the team who don't feel like that they're aligned with the team vision anymore. And so you're seeing that happen and seeing a bigger impact. So you're seeing these guys actually going around and now actually going to other parts of their organisation saying, we now have time to do those things. Because one thing we've learned with this, if we do it with all the various organisations, again, Andrew pointed out what marketing people get paid and finance people and all this, they don't talk to each other very nicely. They always blame each other. They throw rocks over each other's fence, typically. Yes, I know. People are looking at me incredulously, even in the not-for-profit sector. We will say, oh, those IT people, blah, 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 those finance people, create all our problems. So the thing is, this gives them opportunity to have bigger impact on each other because they can actually see the opportunity to help. But you have to create the focus to become aware, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me, is if you don't create the focus on it, your energy only goes where your focus goes. So this becomes the area that you focus on the most. And then I find that the team come up with we never go into an organisation and tell them what to do. We just give them a tool, and I think you could do this yourself. You don't necessarily need us to help you. Obviously, we'd love to work with you, but ultimately, it's just the team becomes aware, and that's where their energy goes, and then they start to identify the projects. So they go, you know what, if we did da-da-da, that's going to give us more time to do X, Y, Z. So those sorts of conversations only happen when we really start to focus back on the conversation around what are our people doing. Something we do, we call this working day calendar, and all it really is this just is a summary in a month for a team. So this is group tasks. This is the month through from March to April. And these are projects that they're working on. This is the hours allocated. So as a manager, they can work out how much of the team time is being allocated in various places. And that's really important from a manager, again, because managers are busy people to do lots of things. Some managers don't like numbers, so we give them colourful charts. Just telling you again, where is the time being spent by individuals, on what kind of activities, and are they the activities that the organisation needs to get the great outcomes for what it's trying to achieve. So this is the team. The boss can see who's got it. And this isn't going, again, we do not do this as Big Brother is watching. We do this to create opportunity to say, this person's over-allocated work, this one's not. I see it all the time. There's those people who will give you more and more and more and more, and then somebody sitting over there and they go, oh, that's the lazy person. And it's like, well, are they lazy? Have you asked them if they'd like to be involved? You go and tap them on the shoulder and they go, well, you know, I was just trying to keep my head down because I heard there was retrenchments coming if I didn't have something to do, so I was trying to look busy. And it's when you start to do this kind of thing that you can actually start to help people get a greater impact from each other. So basically, in summary, I just really think it's about, if you employ the right team, your team is really the only first step. It's getting those people in the door, making sure they've got the skills that you need, running to the right job descriptions and all those other things that we measure people by. Get them engaged in the right activities or the right actions to create great outcomes. So you can only do that if you know what it is they're doing. And then just create a system to support it. I think that if we don't create systems or we leave it to individuals to create their own, then you find that everybody's not talking the same language and you don't get the same cut through that you could if the team's talking the same language.